Hello, and welcome to another episode of Latina Life with Jenna Malena. Our Super Latina today is a leader in Los Angeles and with one of the city's most beloved teams, the Los Angeles Dodgers. As Vice President of External Affairs and Community Relations at the Dodgers, her mission is to lead the team's civic, community, and philanthropic works and to be a pillar of support and help when the community is in need. She was shaped by a family that dedicated itself to giving back. I love that we are showcasing her story during National Hispanic Heritage Month. Welcome to the show, Naomi Rodriguez.
Oh, I am so happy to be here. I know we have been trying to schedule this, but most importantly, I am inspired by the two of you, Latinas, trying to support other Latinas. I mean, that is where my heart is. I have two young women, young girls myself. My daughters. And so thank you for doing this. Thank you for shedding light on our community, on Latinas, experiencing all different things in this world. So I really appreciate you supporting me, but mostly supporting all the women that need it. So thank you.
Oh my goodness. Thank you. And I just, that fills my heart. I know it's going to fill Malena. Malena's not with us for this episode. I know she regrets it, but she's off traveling. So, but she's going to be so excited. I've been talking to her about you nonstop, which is why I'm like, I'm sorry you're not going to be here, but we're going to do it without you. And I have to thank you so much because you hung in there with me. You know, I was sick. I did get COVID and it's taken like, I don't know, 3-4 weeks to like fully get over it. So thank you so much. I really appreciate you just holding us in, you know, such high regard.
I'm glad you're better. That's most important. You know, I had a COVID a few times, so I understand. So of course, I'm looking forward to it too.
Okay, well, let's get right to it. Okay, I feel such an affinity with you because we're both from Southern California. We're both from Los Angeles. I understand you grew up in East LA. Is that correct?
Well, both of my parents grew up in East Los Angeles, and my grandmother's home is still there, and it's the home that we go back to for everything, right? So I now live in Santa Clarita, and I grew up in the San Gabriel Valley, but our family is from East Los Angeles, and it's the home that has all the degrees on the walls of my brother and my cousins, and it's a home that I think we go back to for everything. It's a little home in East Los Angeles that is our family home. My parents were born and raised in East Los Angeles, and they met in East Los Angeles. So I really have a fond memory of the times, you know, spending the holidays there, and times have changed a lot, but so I call it my home, although I didn't go to school there. I ended up going to Azusa High School and grew up in the San Gabriel Valley.
Which is still California, which is still LA, really.
Yes,
honestly,
it's
right?
still LA. It's very LA. I'm very LA. I lived in Los Angeles for many years. Everywhere from the east side. I lived in El Sereno for some years. I lived in the valley in Northridge, and other parts of the valley, and now I have my family in Santa Clarita.
Oh my gosh. And I really want to get into your family because they really dedicated their lives to giving back, correct? So how did that, you know, get instilled in you? I mean, what do you remember growing up?
Yeah, so I have to say, when I think of community service, for me, it's just how we grew up. It's a way of life. My parents, both of my parents, at a very young age, instilled that in me and my siblings. Even to the point of helping your neighbor, but even helping the person in the store that you could tell needed support. I mean, I have so many stories of my parents helping others, and both of my parents were Christians, and I feel like their faith and our faith is a big part of why we give back and do what we do. And then also my father had a very hard upbringing, and maybe started out his path rough. He was involved in gangs, and but more had a drug problem, And thankfully he got sober. He had many years of being on drugs and in and out of
Mhm.
jail, but
Mhm.
thankfully he got sober. And basically, he and my mom dedicated their lives to helping others. I mean, as part of his sobriety and his second chance, uh, they began to foster young youth, mainly Latino men. I had
Mhm.
foster young youth, men and women, but mainly men. They moved to Victorville, and during that time, Victorville wasn't what it is now. It was just, my mom says, it was our ranch. It was Dale Evans and Roy Rogers. I don't know if you know who they are, but they were old
Yes. Mhm.
in the movies. And so they started their fostering there in the high desert. That's where I was born. Was in Apple Valley. And they began their mission in life to help foster youth. My parents must have fostered over 100 youth throughout their time.
Wow.
Yeah, they were very dedicated to fostering and helping, and um, giving those sort of a second opportunity and chance, or maybe even a first, to get healthy and basically have
Mhm.
a good productive life. So my parents did that for many years, and then unfortunately my dad was and thank God, I should say very clearly, he was sober, and he stayed sober,
Mhm.
so he never went back.
Mhm.
So thank God for that. It's really important that I say that. And it's also important, my mother always tells me to likes to remind me that I was born and my brother were both born in love and in a sober, when he was at a good, very healthy time of his life. So, and I say that because it's part of my who I
Mhm.
am, my
Mhm.
genetics, like,
Mhm.
I think
Yeah.
about that all the time. So my going back to my parents were fostering in the high desert, and um unfortunately my parents were leaving church on Sunday morning, and my father was crossing the street, and two drunk drivers came and ran him over.
Mm. I'm so
um
sorry.
and so my mother moved back to Los Angeles, and to be closer to family and to raise her three children. And but even though my mom went through her own pain and recovery of losing her husband, the community part and the element of helping others just never stopped. It's still, she's going to be 80, and she still has that in her spirit. And so I don't think it's a mistake that I ended up in community service. I'm I don't know that being working for the Dodgers was ever a dream of mine, because it
Mhm.
it wasn't something that, very frankly, growing up, I like many Angelinos, I visited Dodger Stadium, and I loved Fernando, still do, Fernando
Mhm. Yeah.
Valenzuela, and enjoyed the stadium, and I was there with my family, and it's kind of just what you do. Um, but to say that I ever thought, oh, I could maybe have a career here or work here, I never saw anyone that looked like me. I never even saw women, frankly. But forget a woman of color or a Latina,
Mhm.
I it just didn't exist for me. It wasn't something I could even dream about.
Right.
And so it when the opportunity presented itself, I like to say it's when preparation met opportunity and all the right things were lined up. It was it was supposed to be. It was meant to be. So but I carry with that, my parents' struggles, their uh
Mhm.
not only their
Mhm.
struggles, but also all the amazing things and accomplishments you know, that they dedicated their life to. And I think that very much makes me who I am.
It's so interesting. You touch on so many different topics that are so important to us Latinas, growing up. Obviously, the story we carry our parents' stories, right? And we shouldn't shy away from the hardships. I do feel sometimes, I mean, I'm first
Mhm,
generation.
mhm.
So, and my parents, they're still with me, they're still alive, they're still together. My dad was a tailor.
Congratulations for that.
Thank you. Thank you. I know. Yes. So my dad was a tailor. He still is. He's still
Mhm,
working. He's in his 70s. And my mom, also helped him out, the tailor shop too. So, but you think about their struggles and how like they mold you, right? And so I think one thing growing up in a Latin community, yes, we have seen like, drug use. And I think that, or addiction, because it's not just drug use, right?
Yeah.
And it definitely, you see not only how it impacts the person, but how it impacts the person's families and then for generations to come. So sometimes it is difficult to either, I don't know if you ever break the cycle or you kind of repave the road, right? I don't know if you ever end the road, you just have to like repave it. And sometimes some people try to shy away from it and not embrace it in their stories. And that's what I feel so admirable about you, because you've been so open about it, that it takes away the stigma that some Latinas face,
So true. Oh my gosh, I'm glad you're bringing this up, because I have to tell you, I didn't always that didn't just happen overnight. Because to be honest, I was worried that I would be judged, and
Yep.
you know, although the drugs were never a problem for me, I've never done those type of drugs, and that was not my story. But it certainly was my father's story, and I was nervous that people would say, well, what does that make me?
Right. Exactly. Or why is she in the room? Or do
Yeah,
you belong in the room? Do you belong
yeah,
in the room?
and
Right.
yeah, yeah. So yeah, what does that make me? How do you look at me now? How was I raised? Like, what do you like? All of these things. And then I
Yeah.
realized at a certain point, I'm going to be 50 in a few years. And so,
Yeah.
and so I realized that's my story. And that's where my power comes, my internal power. Because when I think about my struggles, I don't, and have never had nearly the struggles that my father and my parents had. Not even
Yeah.
close. And I don't know how many people, you could just look up the science of this. Heroin, not many people can overcome a heroin problem. Something happens to the brain, and it's a whole thing that happens.
Right.
But imagine my father was strong enough with his faith, with my mother, to overcome his addiction. To me, that's very powerful. Like, you flip it completely and you say, that's something very powerful. So, and his strength and his actually also in the love in his heart to immediately want to help other people with some similar problems. Some are different, but I think he also felt like he knew what it felt like to sort of be discarded, right? Like, and discarded and disregarded, right?
Yes.
By his own family and by my grandmother. And that love, instead of being angry, he just filled his spirit with love, and both of my parents. And they made a conscious decision to say, we need to help others, like like my father, and in our neighborhoods. And these are people in our neighborhoods. These are people from East Los Angeles. These were people from South LA. These were kids and youth that were living on the streets, that their parents were addicted to drugs, that they were to school. My parents literally took them off the streets and gave them, a place to live, and, structure and love and all of these things. So when I think about, if anybody wants to judge me for my father's story, then, those are their thoughts. But I am my own person with the strength and the generational power of my parents. It is also my story. I am the daughter of Eugene Rodriguez. I am his living daughter, his living history. And I'm proud of that. And I carry that with me. And it's also where my compassion comes from.
Absolutely, 100%. And I think that's so important for everyone who listens to your story and listens to us about this, to understand it, because there's so many people like us, so many women like us, Latinas, that are in the same boat, have gone or going through a similar journey and are feeling, that self-consciousness. It's already hard if, let's say, you do have a blessed life and you don't have that. You're still, you have challenge as a Latina, as well. So, I was just talking to my mom today about like how when you feel blessed, you are a blessing to others as well. And you actually, like, you symbolize that, And so this growing up, your childhood, I mean, you brought up that saying about preparation and opportunity, right? Gets you ready. I remember hearing preparation opportunity equals luck, because there's no luck, right? Because you're preparing for
That's
everything.
Right. That's right.
And without even knowing in your childhood, you were preparing for that. So as you went into, college, is that community service? Is that something that you were thinking about, or is that,
I always felt something special in my heart. Like I just felt like I never stopped giving back. Even I studied communications and political science, and I always felt good when I was with other people and just doing things for other people. It's almost like a selfish thing. I felt kind of like I'm saying it in a selfish way because it made me feel a certain way, helping others. And thinking about my career, I thought about law for a little bit. And then I took some classes. And I'm like, okay, no, law, this is not my thing.
No. I hear you.
So, but I knew that community advocacy and sort of kind of being on the ground was something that fueled me. And I knew that I just knew that I had to do something that gave back to my community. So I worked for a nonprofit. I worked in the private sector. My first job out of college after I graduated was working in City Hall. I worked for, a few elected officials, and it all felt very fulfilling when I was doing things in my community in Los Angeles, as I was watching Los Angeles change, and as it continues to change. And I just feel like when I look around in our city, and I'm like, this is where my parents grew up. This is where my family, my grandparents, I just feel this sort of nostalgia of I couldn't be anywhere else. Like, I don't know. That's just how I feel. And growing up, I'll give you an example. So, my mother used to take us to, two things. I should say this first. My father, he would tell my older brother, they would often go to the border of Mexico. And at the time, obviously during that time, it was different than it is now.
Yes.
And they would go to the border and they would take blankets, and they would basically empty out their closets and their everything. And my dad would say, take everything. Like, you think, there's always somebody that needs this. So they would drive with my foster brothers, and they would drive to the border and give everything. And so my mother we would do the same. And I remember we used to go to Skid Row, and to be honest, it did scare me when I was smaller. And to help, and my mom would say, your father always would say, if you think that you're any different than that person, you're not. You are not any different. By God's grace, we are not there. And that could be you tomorrow. Like that is a human being there.
Right.
And I just think about these things. I don't remember my father, but through my mother, through my foster brothers, I love being around my foster brothers and my foster sisters because they'll talk about my dad. And these words of wisdom, but it all came from, some mistakes, some pain, and also, making good decisions too later in his life. So that and we used to call my mom my brother and I used to call my mom the advocate, because everywhere she went, she would like help someone everywhere. We're eating dinner, and sometimes we'd be like, Mom, can we just eat dinner? Like, no, that woman should not be treated that way, or whatever it was. So I just say that to say that sharing those stories, I feel like coming into the Dodgers, coming into the space that I'm in, it's very natural for me. It's not even like it's just a very natural thing that happens. And I'm blessed with an education. I'm blessed with some creativity. And then with a team like the Dodgers, that it's part of their history with Jackie Robinson and all these things where these two things came together perfectly. And I do have a really creative side too, that I would love to, in my dreams, to start some sort of clothesline, or I've been thinking about a lot of things with messaging though.
Yeah.
And so that's been something as I'm getting older, like if I need to, like I want to do a brand of t-shirts that have like cute t-shirts with my daughters that have messaging, and
Yeah.
that send a message to teens, and whether it's with wording or whatever, like sayings. And I have a book full of sayings that I want to put on t-shirts. It's something that I've been thinking about. But also, so I feel like all of this coming together now that I'm going to be 50, and having the platform of working with the players, with the Dodger players. Many of them are very philanthropic. It's such an easy thing to help brainstorm with them and help them sort of build who they are off the field.
It's amazing. And by the way, when you're ready to launch that t-shirt, we're going to have you, that line, we're going to have you back on.
Okay.
It's going to be amazing. And I can't wait to see all of the sayings that you have, for sure.
Yes. Thank you.
So
both in English and Spanish. I have them in English and Spanish.
Perfecto. So, y dale con las ganas. I mean, I'm excited about this. Yeah. But wanted to go back to something you mentioned earlier in the interview, where you didn't think about being part of the Dodgers. In fact, when we were growing up, when we saw the Dodgers, the Fernando Valenzuela or Hershiser years, you didn't see women, right, in the executive offices. So I'm just curious, as a Latina, if there was ever a moment where you had a challenging moment, actually, because you were Latina, and how you overcame that, or got through it,
The challenging moments, yes, I think we all do, but yes, they do exist, and they have existed. And I think it really depends on the situation, but most importantly, I don't think of myself when I enter a room, or in the process of working with some of my colleagues. There are times when I'm the only woman in the room or the only Latina, although the Dodgers have been very progressive since I'm going into my 9th season. And now we have 2 other Latina executives, a Black woman. I mean, they've done some really great strides.
Amazing.
Which I'm very, very proud of. But I've never thought about it like that. I've thought about it more of like, okay, I'm the only woman in the room, or I'm the only Latina in the room. I've thought, I have something to say, and I bring value to this conversation, and I'm here for a reason. And that's what I focus on, like being your best, on your game. And I think, and bringing what you have to the table. I am not a baseball analytics genius, right? That's not why they hired me at all. And but I do bring something else to the table, and that's why I'm there. I mean, I'm that fan that was walking up those stairs. I'm that, I know you don't have to tell me what it's like to be Mexican in Los Angeles. I don't have to read a book. I can tell you what it's like. And I know, and as LA is evolving, staying in touch with the community, like that is one of the things that I bring to the table. And so I try to focus on those moments, those challenging moments, like, okay, asking myself, like anybody else, you get frustrated, you want to react or whatever, like asking myself, okay, what's my intention here? Like, is my intention to show everybody how upset I am, or you were rude to me, or that was insulting, or whatever it was, can be. It's so my intention is to make sure that our voices are heard, that my voice is heard, that what our community has to say is on the table. Sometimes that can be scary too, right? Because it might be a different thought.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. But it's also, then I remind myself, why am I here? Okay, yeah, that's why I'm here. And so, and then I also, and I said this earlier, think about my father and his challenges. Like, how many times did, even after he got sober, did they think, oh, there's that drug addict, right? There's whatever. When they moved to the high desert, to the Victorville area, there were no Mexicans, there were no Latinos, there were
Mm,
no minorities in
what a different time.
it was a different time. So could you imagine, they get to this ranch, it's a Mexican family, and then like 50 Mexican kids, and everyone's like, what the heck? What is this? So can you just imagine like
Yeah.
that how that felt? And so having the strength to just keep moving. And then also I have supporters like that are here. I have mentors. I always have mentors. That's a big support. I throw things off of people. What do you think about this? And some are in the field, but some of them aren't. Most of them aren't. And how should I respond in this way? And I love having mentors. I'll have mentors till I die, because there's always somebody with more experience that maybe has been in that situation and like what to do. So I'm a mentee, because I mentor people, and I'm also a mentor, right?
Mhm,
Well, yeah,
mhm.
exactly. The other
Yeah,
way.
yeah.
Yeah, I flipped that. But but yeah, so I do both, and
Yeah.
that really helps me too.
I mean, that is so important. And it's something that, I mean, I know this sounds, a little out of touch, but I feel like it's something that I'm really fully understanding now. And like my community of friends, colleagues within the industry as well,
Mhm.
where, some people have mentors, some people don't have mentors, some people have the supporters, the people that will say your name when you're not in the room, right?
Mhm.
And how important it is. But I don't think Latinas in our community like really understand like how to foster that relationship. Like what advice would you give to people in regards to fostering a relationship with a mentor or a supporter, like you say?
Yeah, I mean, it's connecting. Sometimes you just connect with people too. It's having the
Mhm.
conversation, and when you feel that connection. I'll be honest, there's been times where it's been a very specific, deliberate thing, like, will you mentor me? And then other times where it's been just a natural thing where maybe I don't verbalize, will you mentor me? But I call that person like for advice, and
Right.
so it depends on the person and the situation. I also have male mentors too. And I like that, because it's just a different perspective, which is
Exactly. Yeah.
it's just helpful.
Mhm.
And I also think that um it- I think people want to help people, one, that want to be helped and that have a vision for where they want to go, right? So,
Yes.
and I tell my mentees this. I say, you can't just go to a person and just be like, I don't know what I want to do, I don't know where I want to go, I don't know. It's like hard to help a person like that. But when you're
Right.
very specific about what you, at least what you're thinking, you might not have it all together, but at least what you're thinking, and then your mentor can help you kind of navigate that. I think that's helpful in having
Mhm.
a mentor, because then you're helping yourself, you're helping the mentor help you. And sometimes there's very specific requests of a mentor, right? Like I
Mhm.
would love if we could just connect once a quarter or whatever. I'm a writer and I'd love for you to read this, or there, if there's specific things, that's also good too. Most of the people that mentor me, I go to them for advice on decisions,
Okay.
uh, and strategy, like this next move, or how should I position this. And that, at my level, I think it's really important to putting the strategy together. And then sometimes if I'm questioning myself, sometimes it's confidence, right? And sometimes I just need to hear like, you got it, you know what you're doing, like just
Yeah.
go for it. And yeah, there are lots of times when I need to hear that, like that's the right decision.
Yeah.
I have people in my life that are with me and for me, because you
Mm.
can have people that are with you but that they're not for
Mhm.
you. And
Mhm.
so for me, it's important that they're with me and for me. And that I look at that and say, like, you just know, like, for example, one of my mentors is my pastor.
Mhm.
And like, when I'm hurting, I feel that he's hurting for me, like it's this kind of relationship where I care about him and his wife so much. And he's also obviously a spiritual man, but he's for me, like he is
Yeah.
like undoubtedly for me. He's
Right.
with me because he's my pastor, but I'm his, one of his followers, but he's for me. He wants the best for me. He wants me to succeed. It's really important that you surround yourself with people like that.
Yeah, that's so important to also realize that you can have mentors in different areas, right, of your
Oh,
life.
absolutely. Yes.
Because I think some
Absolutely.
people might forget that, right? And they're just thinking business, but they're not thinking
No,
about the
no. Yeah,
spiritual side.
that's a very good point. It's a very important point. Yes, for sure.
Now, I know you have, like you said, been a mentor to others. You've been inspirational to others. You and the Dodger team have been such a pillar of strength for LA and its
Hmm.
communities, especially, during the pandemic. And I remember everyone going, my parents included, to Dodger Stadium to get their COVID vaccines and everything. And you guys were just, I don't know, you rolled on up and it was like clockwork. I mean, I felt we're going through this whole thing and all of a sudden just to have someone who had something structured or a place that something
Yes,
structured,
it's
people
true.
looking out for you.
Yes.
So you've had some life-changing moments yourself while they're leading the Dodgers. What stands out in your mind in regards to maybe one or two big moments that have impacted you personally?
Oh, there's been so many, and it's just been first the liberty to use the platform, the Dodger platform, and the actual stadium to help so many. So the you know at there's been life-changing memories at Dodger Stadium, right? So there's been,
Mm-hmm.
and one of them may be winning the World Series, right?
Yes,
Yes. uh
absolutely.
the life-changing memories, but families make baseball memories, but they make all these other memories. Watching your mother or your father, your son or daughter get a life-saving vaccine.
Mm-hmm.
Watching your daughter, your son vote for the very first time. I like to say that the Dodgers are part of the cultural fabric in Los Angeles, and it just doesn't mean on the field. It's off the field. It's these memories of what happens at that stadium. It's so magical. And even things that happened before I got there, the Pope visiting. I mean, the way that what the stadium and the team means to our fans and our community is, myself included. And during the pandemic, we had never, obviously, none of us had ever experienced anything
Mm-hmm.
like what
Mm-hmm.
we
Yeah.
experienced.
Mm-hmm.
And I oversee government affairs for the Dodgers also, and so I was talking with the mayor's office and our elected officials and like, okay, what can we do? What can we do to help? And obviously, the obvious thing, we looked at the space and we said, well, there's this huge space like that. There's nobody's going anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And immediately, the mayor's office, we talked, and we had originally had we were getting COVID testing in one of our smaller parking lots, and it was just so overwhelming that we moved it to our bigger parking lot inside the stadium. And then that went from the bigger parking lots to once we had the vaccine, and it's interesting, and people were driving from all over because they wanted to say, I got my vaccine at Dodger
Yeah,
Stadium.
exactly.
And even voting, people voted from all over to, when we had the election, just to get the I voted at Dodger Stadium sticker. And so those were things that were very special, very unique, that I'll never forget. But I think for me, the moments where you really see how the brand touches our community and touches our youth. And I've had my moments of crying and just feeling overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
I often say to the players and those that I work for, it's like these are
Mm-hmm.
life-changing moments that sometimes take 10 seconds. Signing a ball, looking at a youth and saying, you're worthy, you're enough, you can do it. It could be, some of our players have foundations. It could be giving scholarships. It could be some of the events and the things we do at the stadium or in the community.
Mm-hmm.
Or it could be a moment where we visit someone sick in the hospital. I remember, this one always sticks in my mind because he was very emotional.
Mm-hmm.
And so there was a family that, and I want to say that there were 5 in the family, the parents and 3 kids.
Mm.
And they got in a car accident. The car caught on fire. And basically the everyone died except the mother and the son. So the father died and the other siblings died. So the young boy that was still alive, he didn't know yet that his siblings were not alive. And because he was just recovering in the hospital, and his uncle reached out to us because he was a big Matt Kemp fan. And I remember asking Matt if he would go and visit them in the hospital. And it was just so emotional. So we went to visit the family. It was basically the mother and the son. And he was all bandaged up from the burns. And it was really hard to see the young boy. He was young. But I remember when Matt walked in the room and how he just lit up, and it was just unbelievable. Like that moment of how Matt being there and spent time with him, and they read to him, and they talked about baseball, and the mother, and it just I just always think of that family, because I think, he lost his father and his siblings, and how traumatic. Like nothing can replace that. But the fact that we could spend the time with him and just remind him that he's loved and he's not alone. And those moments like that are moments that I always think about. And I remember that one in particular because Matt lost his son. I mean, sorry, not his son, his brother, when his brother was a baby. And so we were both obviously thinking about our own situations, right? Like what has happened in our own life, but turning that outward to help somebody else, right? And I remember that day because I know it was hard for him to be there, because his brother was a baby, but he did it anyway, right? Because he was helping this young man. So those kind of moments, they touch me. This is what I'll say. I know people think we're doing things to help others, but I think it affects me more, and the players get something out of it. Like they probably get more out of it than they're giving. And that's the magic of it. That is the magic. It's almost a little bit selfish, because the magic of that, and the blessing of having the ability to help.
It's like you're this ray of sunshine, honestly, that has touched other people and their rays of sunshine too. It's just this domino effect that everyone can have, right? If everyone actually did one thing a day, right? It's so important, one thing a day. And, you lead with your heart, and it definitely shows with the Dodgers and the team. And everything I've seen, how the Dodgers, like I've said, I grew up here, Dodger fan, went to the games when I was a kid with my family, and now I'm taking my kids to, and I have seen how it has evolved, and I see your fingerprints on it. And it's so proud to, as a Latina, to say, yes, this Latina is having such a hand, with it. And I'm just so proud of you, and I admire you, and, keep on doing what you're doing. So before I let you go, I do want to know, I know you have, meetings and ideas about what's going to be coming up with the Dodgers. I mean, what can we expect to see, like, coming up with? Is there anything new or big initiatives that you guys are working on that maybe the community would be excited about hearing?
Well, I think I'm always looking for, we have something called the Community Hero Award that we give out throughout the year. So, and basically a community hero is just, it could be your mailman, it could be your teacher, it could be a CEO of a corporation, it could be anyone, it could be somebody that's done a lot in their community through a nonprofit. But we're always accepting nominations for the Community Hero Award. So if you want to go to the Dodger website in the Community Relations Department and nominate somebody that's doing something great in your community, we'd love to receive those nominations. So that is really, I'm always, and the team is always looking for a way to uplift people that are doing great things in our community. So that, I would say, whoever's listening and you think of, oh, I know someone, please reach out. It's really important that we continue to honor and highlight people that are doing good things. And it inspires other people to do good things too. So, and it can be a young person, an old person, anything. There's no limits around the Community Hero Award, other than it's somebody in your community doing positive things. And so I would just want to just highlight that as we get into the postseason, and the team is doing so great now, which is very exciting. We might clinch the division tonight if we win, and in Arizona we might clinch the division. So that's very exciting. As we get into postseason, we always have a philanthropic or community element to postseason. So we work with MLB to do that. So you can be on the lookout for that as we continue to progress in the postseason. And we have our year-round programs. Also, another program we have, which is great, is our Kids for Dodger Baseball program. And for this program, for the underserved communities, we invite youth to come to a ball game. We pay for everything. We pick them up. So let's say we send a bus to the community center in South LA or in Pacoima or wherever it may be. In underserved communities, we will send a bus wrapped in Dodger gear, the whole thing, give you a hat, a shirt, and we pay for you to come to the stadium, enjoy the game, have a Dodger dog, a Coke, whatever it is, and then enjoy yourself. And then we give you transportation. So the Kids for Dodger Baseball, we're always accepting applications for that program. And that program is specifically for youth in underserved communities. So you as a teacher can apply. You can apply for your school. You can apply through your church. You can apply through your after school program. And it's just a great way to bring youth to the stadium. And we work with Boys and Girls Clubs, and we work with a bunch of different nonprofits. So you may know one. And again, so you could go to the Dodger website at the community program and apply under the community relations section. You can apply for the Kids for Dodger Baseball program, which is amazing, great program. Yes.
Oh my God, so important, so wonderful and amazing. Okay, one more thing before we leave. I know I keep saying one more thing, but any words of advice for anybody who maybe wants to follow in your footsteps, doing what you do?
Yeah, I mean, that's always hard for me because there's so much, I think, in that question, but I would say follow your heart. But in that, I never thought my personal story would sort of be the anchor of my career. And so what makes my work so important is it's anchored in who I am and my own personal story. So maybe think about, like, okay, who you are, where you were raised, how that makes you who you are, because that is what drives you eventually in your career, and how that can be part of what you do every day, right? Because it can be, because I didn't think, like, I thought, okay, well, if I study political science, or if I could, whatever, I didn't think that the two would sort of marry. And I think what makes my work powerful, and maybe our work powerful at the Dodgers, is that they're connected, and they're just connected. And so I think that if you're thinking about your future, and something in your life is just so much part of your life, like you're growing up, your experience, it's just in your heart every day. It's like in your heart, it's part of who you are. How can you make that story part of your life story, not just your personal story? And I feel that that's where success comes from.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Naomi. I mean, I so appreciate it. We all appreciate everyone listening. Thank you for sharing just your story, such wonderful advice, such inspiration. So, and I know we're going to have you back again, like I said.
I want to come back because there's other there's fun things we can talk about too. Like and I'll come back when I do my line of my shirt, but I also,
for sure,
but I also would love to help. I would love to recommend some Latinas for you to interview too, because I just love
100%.
promoting other Latinas. I love it. I love it. Love it.
Okay, for sure. We're going to have her call you. We'll have a talk about that.
Yeah.
And then everyone else can listen to their stories, right? All the
That's right.
Latinas out there, listen to your stories. Remember to tune in and listen to Latina Life with Jenna Malena on iHeart and Apple all the time. You'll hear Naomi's wonderful stories, plus a bunch of others coming up. A mis Latinas, mwah, muchos besos. When you wake up in the morning, you know, con ganas y dale. Okay. Thank you.
Dale.
Dale.
Bye.
Bye.